So the SEC spring meetings have come and gone. We'll just start with you, Jimmy. They've come and gone. Did we leave with a better grasp of what the next playoff format will be? No. Did we leave with an answer as to whether or not the Tennessee, the SEC is going to go to an 8 or a 9 game schedule? No. So, Jimmy, what did we accomplish at the SEC meetings? What did Greg Sankey and the crew come up with?
They didn't, but I got 29 interviews, so the heck with them.
There you go.
I could tell on Monday when Greg Sankey met with the media before the spring meeting start, they weren't going to decide any of this. There were some other reporters that said, oh, they're going to make a decision on 8 or 9 games. And the reason they're holding back, a big reason is they don't have directive on the college football playoff format. 12 teams, 14 teams, 16 teams. Are you going to continue to reward one-loss record over strength of schedule? They don't have those answers. And so that's what's holding them back. And also, within the SEC, within the conference, athletic directors want one thing, the coaches want another. And so you got to come on the same page here. The one thing I do think will happen is that we will have a 16-team playoff.
Yeah.
That seemed to be the only thing that came out of that, wasn't voted on. But, yeah, they didn't vote on anything other than finding you $500,000 if you storm a court.
That's it. That's the deal. If you storm the field, it's $500,000 now, which isn't going to stop anybody. When you look at some of the things Jimmy talked about there, coaches and ADs, let's start there with people not agreeing. Basically, you had this move, it looked like, toward 4 automatic bids that the SEC and the Big Ten were going to go for. And then they went and spoke to the coaches, and the coaches made it pretty clear, no. We want it more equitable. Let's do 5 conference champions get in, and then it's just the next 11 best teams. Okay. The problem is your ADs don't want that. There's more money if you can do the 4-game thing and the 4 automatic bids and then turn that into play-in games. And then the other aspect of that is the athletic directors are good with a 9th game because that's more money. And the coaches, they don't want a 9th game because that's another loss. So you've got ADs here, coaches here. Surprised by the split at all? Not necessarily in the 8 or 9, but the playoff surprised me a little bit. The coaches were better with 5 games than they were getting automatic bids 4 for the conference.
Yeah, I thought that split was probably the most noteworthy out of the week. That I thought they would have gone in kind of aligned of, hey, this is what we want for the conference, and then you would find out there's an SEC Big Ten alignment in wanting the automatic qualifying spots because they'd get more than the Big 12 and the ACC. So the Big 12 probably came out of SEC meetings happy because they also want the 5+11 format, which is simply 5 automatic qualifiers, your conference champs, and then 11 at-large positions. SEC coaches are probably confident that they can get 5, 6 teams, which they probably could with 16 spots. So I'm not surprised to hear that coaches want that. I was a little surprised to see the split opinion between the coaches and the ADs.
Well, so many of these scenarios have caveats to them. Yeah, the other conferences, the Big 12 and the ACC, they're good with 5+11 having it be wide open, but only if the SEC stays at 8 conference or moves to 9 conference games. But the SEC would only do that if it's 8. You know, so everybody's kind of got this in terms of their hypotheticals, and it makes it even more muddier waters than it already is.
Oh, and even go ahead.
Well, I just think it's interesting just how much, the commissioners or ADs aren't necessarily in alignment with the coaches. I think even Brian Kelly, who you talked to at the spring meetings, was another outlier who wanted the 9 conference games plus an out-of-conference matchup, too. I think it was with the Big Ten.
Correct. Yeah.
And, of course, maybe they're not going to want that, too. So I just thought that part was interesting. But I think the 9 conference games probably is the right move to go. I don't think many people will get up for your UTEP game. So I think if you can get another conference game in there, you talk about revenue sharing, that probably is the right move down the road.
The one thing that surprises me is if you've ever worked in a company, and now I do my own thing here, but I've worked in companies before, and there was nothing worse than the management meetings, and you'd go in there and you would pray that everybody's got their stuff in order. You got 1 hour, you're hoping, and it would never be this way. You'd go in, you'd sit down, and this guy didn't talk to his department. This guy hasn't talked to his department yet. She hasn't talked to her department yet. So it's like, what are we doing in here? I kind of feel that way with this SEC meeting. It's like, could the coaches and ADs not even get on the same page before going down there? Could they just say, hey, unified front, let's do this? And instead it's like, I don't know. Let's see what happens. They just go down there and it's like a day trip. And what do you think? I don't know. It's like they've given no prep to this before the meetings.
John, it's interesting you'd say that because Sankey was very frustrated that the College Football Playoff Committee has not gathered their information and come up with a plan yet. Yet within his own conference, the coaches and ADs are not on the same page necessarily. The interesting thing about the 5-11 format is that if you had that in place last year with the 16-team playoff, the SEC had 6 teams in it. Okay. And they also did a survey over the last 10 years. The last 10 years, under that format, and you just went by AP rankings, the SEC would have had 5 to 7 teams every year, 5 to 7 teams. So that's why the coaches are saying we're confident we can get in there with that format.
Well, and you also had, as Paige said, Brian Kelly, who had it throughout his idea. Lane Kiffin threw out an idea. Was it Hugh Freeze that came up with the, let's have the top 8 in the Big Ten play the top 8 in the SEC for the right to play in the playoff? So you'd be getting 8 between those two conferences. But everybody has their own plan. Again, it's like there's no need for this. That should have been worked out with your athletic director. The athletic director then goes and talks to the SEC group as a whole, and we handle it. One of the problems you're running into is the SEC wants the college football playoff. And is anybody more powerful than Greg Sankey and Tony Petitti in terms of him being unhappy with the college football playoff? No one's got more power than him and Petitti, so maybe get on that, Greg. But one of the things that stands out is, okay, we're not going to do this with our schedules until you give us a playoff format. And on the other hand, it's we're not going to come up with the playoff format until you do this with your schedules.
Right.
Someone at some point is just going to have to hold their nose and make a move. And right now, everybody's just waiting to let the other guy do something first.
I think even more than just the format, it's what Greg Sankey was talking about is how do you determine what is valued for the College Football Playoff Committee? So you mentioned it, Jimmy. So are you valuing strength of schedule? Are you valuing just wins? He said, well, you could schedule, easily to get wins if that's what we're valuing. But I don't think we got that kind of clarity. So we're contingent on what we want to do based on that, but then we don't have clarity on that. So the format, you don't know what's being emphasized. They're not on the same page. So yeah, we took some steps back.
And I think you can tell he was frustrated with the strength of schedule argument because when you were there, he was talking about Nebraska canceling on Tennessee and not wanting that. And if you just want to average it out to, 65 is your strength of schedule and so forth and so on. So I think that should end up being the main thing that indicates your seeding in the playoffs and where you're ranked when it's over.
Yeah, let me take that 65 to a further point. Sankey said a member of the committee told him that if you play number 1 and number 130, your average schedule is 65 and a half. So you're better off playing number 65 and 66, okay? Yeah. Because if you go 2-0 against those teams and 1-1 losing to number 1, then the 2-0 team is going to be in better shape.
By last year, they showed that it's about the record as opposed to who you played.
So basically, that suggestion is why play a tough schedule, which is a bad message in my opinion.
I'll let you finish, Josh.
Well, the SEC's been having this 8 or 9 game conference schedule for how many years now? This predates Oklahoma and Texas coming into the league. Jimmy, 2-3 years ago, you're covering the spring meetings, and that was one of the big topics.
Yes.
Are they going to do 9 games or stay at 8? They went with the short-term plan for last year and this year, where they set the schedule and then reversed it home and away. But the SEC's been having this conversation for half a decade. And we don't seem any closer than we were in 2020, 2021 when we were having the same conversation.
And I give credit to the Big Ten. They don't do this. They just went in and made a decision. And then they added 2 other teams. Washington and Oregon came in and they said, all right, we're going to come up with a new schedule plan. Boom. What did it take? 2 weeks? They cranked that out. And they went with a more nuanced plan, too. I'm no fan of the Big Ten, but come on, Sankey, get your house in order. They know how to say, we got 18 teams. That's not even. How do we do this? And they also looked at it and said, well, this team has 3 real rivals. This team doesn't have any. So we're going to create a schedule that keeps this team's rivals alive, and this team just gets a total rotation. The SEC can't come up with that. Maybe the Big Ten is better academically.